afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is, when and where you're watching this. I'm coming to you again from my hotel. I've got some spare cycles while I'm traveling, so I did one of these yesterday. I've decided I'll do another one today. Having my can tell I'm in New England. Well, I guess there's Dunkin' Donuts everywhere now. I've had Dunkin' Donuts in the Philippines, but one thing that's absolutely reliable in New England is you can always excuse me, you can always find a Dunkin' Donuts. And I happen to be in Massachusetts, which is where Dunkin' Donuts was founded. And I should say that Dunkin' Donuts is not sponsoring me or this broadcast. I'm just telling you what I'm drinking. Um, you can always find a Dunkin' Donuts in Massachusetts. And when I lived here, there were 6 Dunkin' Donuts within about a mile of my house. So I could go in any direction and hit a Dunkin' Donuts. So that's just what was available to me this morning. So that's what I'm having for coffee. Normally I make my own coffee in the morning, but I was out and about, and hey, you can always rely on finding one of those around here. So thank you for joining me this morning. I decided to do a talk about dreams, dreaming, and shamanism. It's a really important topic. It's an important topic to me. Dream work, particularly shamanic dream work, is a bit of a specialty of mine. And I will lead in by saying that I recently was interviewed for a documentary series on dreaming, which is going to be cool. And when I hear that it's coming out anywhere, which will be sometime next year, I will let everybody know about that for sure. Because not just because I'm in it, it sounds amazingly cool talking to the producer, and they've got shamans, they've got neurologists, psychologists, the people who head up the Jung Center for Psychology and stuff, all participating in this. They've got mediums, they've got everybody from scientists to really spiritual people, all talking about dreams and dreaming. And what a cool, like, everybody I've talked to about it, they're like, when's it coming out? When can I see it? I'm excited to see it, and not just because I participated in it, but I will let everybody know when I know. But it seemed really cool. The questions were good. I don't know how they'll. So what happens with with these things, with a lot of these things, you go sit in a studio across from the producer. There's 3 cameras on me, lights, the whole thing, and they just they ask a series of questions, and I go off and I talk about whatever it is they've asked about, and then they go back and they slice that up into little segments. If you ever watch anything, on the History Channel or Discover or anything like that, where they cut in little short segments of people talking, I think it'll be a little bit like that. So they'll, it won't be like a 2-hour long interview with me, and then a 2-hour long interview with somebody else. It'll be little segments of different people talking to kind of put together a narrative. I cannot imagine the amount of work required to put something like that together, to edit, dozens. I think they have something like 30 people, something like that. And they're shooting. So when people talk about stuff, there will be certain things reenacted and all of that. So all seems very fun and very interesting to me anyway. So I was asked to do that, and I have, for almost 2 years, I guess, I had a weekly radio segment where people would call in to have their dreams interpreted on a morning show. And that was a lot of fun, but also very challenging, because not necessarily how I would normally do dream work with somebody who is coming as a client, somebody who is having repetitive dreams, or really prophetic dreams or something. And I would have 5 minutes or so to talk to somebody, and they would just give me their dream, and I would take it in and give my impressions of it and have a short conversation with them. But I think very frequently I was able to be helpful with people, and that was an important aspect of it. That was a really critical piece, because I didn't want to just be entertaining. It's fine, there's the purpose of the morning radio shows to entertain people. But if somebody called in and I could tell there was trauma there, or they were going through something or whatever, I would want to be able to direct them to seek some help, and without it's very sensitive talking to people over the radio live with with that that sort of that sort of stuff when it comes up. I don't want to re-traumatize people or bring something out that people aren't ready to talk about yet. So I'd have to be very sensitive about that. So it was challenging, but I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed connecting with people as I do. Let's get into dreams and the dream world and the shamanic perspective, because that's the only perspective I have to talk about dreaming. And I'll give you a little bit of background with myself. It was interesting. There were several times in my training, in my shamanic training with my teacher, going through my apprenticeship and going through my, the other training that I did, where my teacher was like, okay, we're going to work on this, and dream work was one of those things. We're going to do dream work. And my reaction was, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do dream work. I don't really care about people's dreams. I don't know what it was, but I did it because it was what my teacher said we were doing. I didn't refuse to participate in anything. It was just, I had an attitude of, oh, I really don't want to do this. And then I did it. And for the very first time, I did dream work, and it was incredibly powerful and just blew me away with the information that came through about this person's dream that I was working on. And so I was hooked on doing dream work, and have been ever since. And it's something that a lot of people are interested in, and a lot of people come to me for. And my take on that is that everybody dreams. I know a lot of people will say, I don't dream. What you're actually saying is, I don't remember my dreams, which is true. We don't remember all of our dreams, or there's some of us that very rarely remember our dreams. There are reasons for that. And there are ways to get better at remembering your dreams. I can talk about that a little bit, but we all dream. We know from research, they, have people in sleep labs, they'll wake them up and what was going on, and they'll be able to describe a dream, even if they don't remember it in the morning when they wake up. So we all dream every night. We spend a great deal of time dreaming. And so, there's a lot of questions from a scientific, physiological, psychological perspective of, why do we dream, right? Why is it necessary for us to dream? Because we don't do things that aren't necessary for us. We don't do things, human beings, we don't spend time and energy on activities or functions that don't serve us from a survival perspective, right? And so all these, theories out there, and I don't know what the latest ones are. Dreaming is about processing memory, or, clearing out the activities of the day to let the brain refresh itself, and all of that sort of thing. From a shamanic perspective, during our dream life, part of our consciousness, not all of it, part of our consciousness takes flight and is able to experience alternate realities. That's one view, right? This is sort of the soul travel, astral projection viewpoint, right? From another perspective, information is coming up into our consciousness that's not coming through our senses, and it is arising and we're becoming aware of it. And in our consciousness, it makes for a narrative, it makes for a story, it makes for things that we see and that we do. It is coming through the capacity. I'm going to talk about imagination a little bit because there's an important thing to understand with imagination. Imagination gets a bad rap, right? Things that appear in our quote unquote imagination, we think of as not true or not real. I imagined it, I made it up. But we are imagining everything. Even when I hold this coffee cup, and the light bounces off this coffee cup and hits the backs of my retinas, that creates a chemical electrical signal that goes into the back of my brain. My consciousness has the experience of seeing, feeling, tasting my coffee cup. That subjective experience of the coffee cup is not reality. Okay, yeah, I can touch this. It's consistent. Whatever. That's not what's really out here. This is just quantum soup. It's just particles zipping around in and out of existence in empty space. This is 99.9999 with 7 nines behind it. Empty space. And it is only through the capacity of my imagination that this takes on form. I'm not saying this isn't real, but this is about as real as the things that I imagine in my dreams. They're about the same. They're different flavors, different realities, but it's no different. The capacity for me to have the subjective experience of this coffee cup is the same thing as if I dreamed of a coffee cup, right? Once we understand that, then we start to put more weight on the capacity of our imagination. I was listening to an interesting podcast. One of my favorites is called Ultra Culture by Jason Louv. Jason Louv is, amongst many things, a writer, and he wrote a great book on John Dee called John Dee and the Empire of Angels. And he was talking about angels in this podcast. And John Dee, if you don't know, was a Renaissance, I think I talked about him yesterday too, a Renaissance astrologer, alchemist. He was the advisor to Queen Elizabeth I. He was a spy. He was a statesman. He founded the idea of the British Empire. He spent something like 9 years communicating with angels, in his own way. He would do rituals, and then, he worked with this guy, Edward Kelly. Edward Kelly would do scrying, would look into a dark mirror. He would do these rituals, and then Kelly would look into a dark mirror and be able to see and communicate with these angels. And Dee, over the time, he was very rational, very scientific for that time, invented, he knew he had more books in his possession at that time than the libraries of Cambridge and Oxford combined. And that's a lot of money spent on books. Back in those days, books were very rare. Even though the printing press had been invented, it's still very, very expensive. And he had a couple thousand books cataloged in his collection. So he knew everything about mathematics and science and everything. But so in communicating with these angels, he said, I feel really bad. I'm paraphrasing, of course. I feel really bad because Kelly can see the angels in this scrying mirror, in this black mirror made out of obsidian. He can see and communicate with the angels that way, and I can only see them in my imagination. And the angel that he was communicating with spoke and said, "That's better. It's better to see them in your imagination." So we don't give enough credit to our imaginative capacity, right? And one of the things I said when I was being interviewed for this documentary about dreams, they said, what's the difference? The question was something along the lines of, what's the difference between having a spiritual experience and dreaming? And I said, well, I assume you're talking about visionary spiritual experiences where I have a vision that comes in, or, whatever. And I said, there's no difference. There's no difference between those things. Objectively, those are the same. You're having a spiritual, but also there's no difference between waking reality and a dream and having a spiritual experience. We divide them up in our consciousness. We think of ourselves as dreaming when we're asleep, and the dream world is much less stable. Like I might pick up this coffee cup in a dream and it would, turn into a snake or something like that. So the stability of the world breaks down a little bit in the dream world, but also in other altered states. So like in shamanic states of consciousness, things are much less stable, more flexible. There's less form, that sort of thing. So why are dreams important? Why do shamans all over the world place so much emphasis on dreams? And there are shamanic cultures where you would, in a tribal culture, you would get up in the morning and everybody would sit around and have breakfast together and go around and talk about what they dreamed the night before. Why would they spend time on that instead of, gathering food or hunting or whatever? Because it's important. Because it's important for the cohesion of the group, for one thing. And it's important because the information is considered to be coming through from spirit. From the shamanic perspective, everything is a spirit. You are a spirit. This coffee cup is a spirit. It also has physical form. I also have physical form. I have a body, but I am a spirit. For some people, that's a little bit of a shift in perspective. And when we're dreaming, our conscious mind, our prefrontal cortex, those functions drop away a little bit so that we can experience alterations in reality. We can experience how formless the reality actually is. It would be hard to maneuver in ordinary waking reality if nothing was solid, right? If we didn't perceive things as being solid, if we didn't perceive things as being stable, okay, and that might put our physical body at risk. So it's necessary in waking reality, but waking reality is only one reality. It's only one frequency that we can tune in. But so often, because it is so stable, because it is so solid, because there's weight and form and mass and all of these things, very often from a materialist, realist perspective, we place the most emphasis on this reality. We say, this is it. This is the thing. This is reality. This is the one true reality. But exploring different universes shamanically, we know that that's not true. And we know that we experience overlapping realities. We experience overlapping worlds. Good morning. Nice to see you. It's been a long time. I've been off for a very long time. I have not been. I've not been doing these very often. I did one yesterday and I did one today. I'm traveling and I've got spare cycles, so decided to jump on and talk about dreaming today. It's been an important topic to me. Last week, as I stated at the beginning, last week I was traveling because or the week before last. I'm losing track of my days. because I was participating in a documentary about dreams, which hopefully will come out. It's a series, and hopefully will be out sometime next year. I think it will be. I think there's a tremendous amount of interest in it. So it's one of those things where this documentary company is producing this thing, and they'll the, will will sell it. They'll take the first episode and they'll go out and sell it for distribution. So I don't know where it's going to be yet. Oh, well, that's kind of cool. It's cool that happens, that synchronicities happen. And synchronicity, I'll talk about synchronicity in dreams as well, and sort of the idea of prophecy in dreams. Even dream interpretation is mentioned in the Bible, of course, and so we know, people have been doing it forever and ever and ever. But synchronicity is really important shamanically, and not just between dream and waking life. Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate it. I will definitely let everybody know when and if I hear anything about this coming out. I will let y'all know. But I got to fly out to Chicago week before last, and then when I got back, I got this this flu that went through my whole household. Was not a whole lot of fun, but and now I'm traveling again. So it's been a time. I love it though. I love it. I love. I don't always love. I have a new puppy and a new kitten, and I miss my kids and my animals and stuff when I'm traveling. But I'll see them in a couple of days. So anyway, talking about synchronicity. So synchronicity is a term that Jung used a lot and thought was like incredibly important. Sort of like when we've been thinking about something, and something related to that comes up. I sometimes refer to that as rhymes. It's not my term. Well, obviously, the term rhyme is an English word that means a thing in poetry, but rhymes from a spiritual perspective are themes that come up that are sort of common. So if I pulled a tarot card for the day, and I don't have a deck with me, or I would do that. If I pulled a tarot card or an oracle card or something, one of the things it would do would be to help me tune into what I would call rhymes. So if I don't know, pulled the death card, right? And a death card in tarot just means change, usually significant change. And I actually think dreams of dying are very much related to that as well. Something I would caution people from doing, because I run into this a lot, is buying these off-the-shelf dream dictionaries or looking up what your dreams mean online. Sometimes that's okay. Sometimes it will give you a basic pointer to what something means. As far as interpretation goes, if I'm doing interpretation work, I'm doing dream work with a client, I'm going to be putting things into context. So you've had a dream that seemed really important. Is it recurring? What are the themes in your life that it's related to? What are the questions that you have about your life? So I'll try to give an example without giving away personal information about a client. So I did dream work for somebody who dreamed that they were being handed a crown, right? They were somewhere and somebody put a crown on their head. And I went in, I journeyed, I did journey work following this dream, and I didn't know what was going on with this person's life. And the information that I got was, and then there was a lot of information that comes through. That's one of the reasons I like dream work, is that I get these big downloads that seem to be very helpful for people, quite a lot. And I said, you are thinking about going, this person had been working with somebody else. I said, you're thinking about going off on your own, and now seems to be the time, like spirit is telling you, is pushing you in the direction of going off on your own and doing your own thing. And even though you've had this relationship where you've been working with somebody else for a very long time, years and years, um, it's time. You're ready, but you're worried about it. You're worried about being ready, and but I'm here to tell you that the spirit thinks you're ready, and they're going to push you out on your own anyway. And it hit her like a ton of bricks, and she's like, absolutely, I've been thinking of this, I've been thinking of that, and you know this person is somebody that I'm quite friendly with, and kind of follow up on what she's doing. She went off on her own and has become extremely well known in her field, and is experiencing an incredible level of success and renown for what she's doing. And it was time for her to do that, and still has a good relationship with the person that she was working with before. It just happened to be this was her path. Very often dreams come through that reveal things about our path, also called dharma, also called true will, which has to do with where we're supposed to be, what we're supposed to be doing. um, Sometimes they're trying to steer us, but the information is really metaphoric, and so it can be, sometimes we need to reach out for help. So here is, if I can give a little bit of practical advice in the dream department. If you don't remember your dreams, or don't remember them as well as you might, the most important thing you can do is to keep a dream journal and write down whatever you remember as soon as you wake up. Because what happens is the dream will still be a little fresh when you wake up, and it will fade over time. But in keeping a dream journal and writing these things down, you're sending a signal to your unconscious mind that this is important. It's important enough for me to remember and write it down. And over time, you'll remember more and more of your dreams. The other important aspect to keeping a dream journal, and the way that I would keep a dream journal is that I would, or the way that I, do keep a dream journal, is that open up a journal. You've got a page on the left, a page on the right. You can write, take notes about your dream, write down whatever you remember on one side, and then on the other side, write down what's going on, at the end of your day. Write down what happened during the day. Over time, you're going to develop your own dictionary of dream symbols. Oh, every time I dreamed about apples, something happened, something weird happened at work. Every time I dreamed about this was going on in my life. So you'll start to create these, be able to build correspondences between your dream life and your waking life. There's also, lucid dreaming. If you don't know what lucid dreaming is when you are aware that you're dreaming. And some people who have lucid dreams can actually take control of their dreams and do things consciously in their dreams. There are programs to learn how to lucid dream. I've had some luck with trying to induce lucid dreams. And it's interesting. It's interesting work. You can do all kinds of things. So if you can dream lucidly, you can, say, you can request information or symbols about specific things that are going on in your life. You can work through trauma. You can perform ritual in your dreams. You can live out fantasies in your dreams. A lot of dream stuff is what they call wish fulfillment or fantasy fulfillment dreams. And often if we're dreaming about traveling, or we're dreaming about having a lover that is not our spouse, or our person that we're with. um, it's not to feel bad about that. It's not like, oh, I've got I'm gonna go, I'm cheating on my spouse, or whatever. It's just that there are aspects of us that have certain desires, that's a way to live through them, that is safe, and not not cheating. I don't consider that cheating. Um, uh, in the same way that having fantasies is not as well. Um, and it's perfectly healthy, and it's perfectly natural and normal. And even um, shadow material surfaces in our dreams quite a lot as well. So stuff that we've hidden away. You might have a dream about being violent towards somebody, but not be a violent person. It doesn't make you a violent person. It doesn't make you um, that it just means that there's a part of you that has this survival instinct, or this anger that needs to get worked out in some way. And it can come up in a very primal way in your dream life. Um, I always thought it was weird. Sometimes people felt guilty or shameful about their dreams. Um, no, it's the stuff is working itself out for a reason. It's coming up. If it's something that you feel shameful about, it's definitely a good indicator that it's shadow material coming up. Let's see. I took a nap the other day, had an unpleasant dream. Yeah. So that's a really good point. So having recurring dreams, um, even if they're unpleasant, um, those are really important indicators of stuff that you are trying to process on an unconscious level. So as a child, I had a recurring dream until I was about 13 that was fairly scary. Um, and it was, in doing my work afterwards, it was about the situation, the unsafe situation I was in as a child. And powerful figure in my life, in my case my father, um, that I was frightened of. And I didn't tie those together as a child, but there came a point where I was able to actually use humor in the dream to sort of dissolve the situation, and then I never had the dream again. So, um, yeah, yeah. So, memory. It's an interesting thing about memory, and as it relates to dreams, and as it may relate to this case, where even though you don't remember the dream in your waking life, you knew that it was the same dream that you were having again. Memory is very what we call state dependent, right? So that's why a lot of people, the old trick that they used to teach us was, and I don't know why they taught us this, because it didn't, like, we weren't allowed to chew gum in school, but when you're studying for a test, chew gum of a specific flavor. And then when you're taking the test, chew gum of that same flavor. So, whatever. And that would help to create the mental state in which you memorize the information. Um, Sort of like, you know, trying to think of something really specific. But it's why that's why we don't necessarily remember our dreams when we wake up, because they happened and we were in a completely different mental state than when we're awake. But there's this short window of time between sleep and being completely awake. So when you're coming out of sleep, it's called the hypnopompic state, in which your brain is still kind of half asleep and half awake, and that is ripe for dream memory. Just because you're much closer to where you were, than complete waking. And when you go in the other direction, when you go to from waking into sleep, there's that short period of time where you're half awake and half asleep is called the hypnagogic state. And again, like that's ripe for doing dream incubation. So as you're going to sleep and you want to, you can give yourself suggestions about having dreams, remembering dreams. It's a good time to give yourself the the suggestion, I will remember my dreams tonight. Sometimes it can take practice, it can take some level of consistency with doing dream journaling and that sort of thing. But pardon me, I'm still getting over this this flu I had. I'm feeling nearly 100% better. I just have a persistent cough. Anyway, back to. Oh, you're welcome. I'm so happy. That makes me happy that anytime I can, share something, but I also learn from people here as well. So it's a lovely thing. And I have a little sip of my coffee. It's a little bit cold at this point, but it's better than nothing, I guess. So from a shamanic perspective, the dream world is very close to the world that we journey into. And so lots of work can be done there. Lots of information can come through from spirit there. How do we know? So why and how do we know that information is coming from spirit? Or is it just coming from our unconscious, or is it, whatever? It's not incredibly important. It's not an incredibly important distinction. I would say that all information is coming from spirit. Like even, what I'm seeing around here, this world is the underpinning of the world from a shamanic perspective is spirit. But in our dream world, we close off our physical senses, right? So I'm asleep, my eyes are closed, I'm not paying attention to the sounds in the room as much, and the sensory input from the outer world shuts down a little bit, and so we become more in tune to our inner world. And so this is why information comes up. It can be very metaphoric and can come up out of our unconscious, but it's also coming from spirit. We're perceiving formless information. That being said, it does require some amount of discernment to know what to do with the information that comes out of dreams. So when I was doing the the radio show, when I was doing dream interpretation on the radio, the host was like, "Oh, my wife had a dream that she was dying and this and that." I'm like, and she's freaked out about it. And I'm like, your wife's not dying. I mean, we're all dying. we're all, nobody is immortal so far, but your wife's not dying. It's not about being sick. It's about going through transition. And so, we have to use a little bit of discretion and discernment to figure out what that means. It means something old, some old way of being is dying off, is going away, so that something new can be reborn. And she was, her wife instantly went to like, maybe I've got cancer, or maybe, this and that. And I knew that it was, intuitively, I knew that wasn't it. But I understand why somebody would freak out. Dreams of dying very often are about change, about major transitions going through. So I had somebody that I worked with that, had this dream that they were falling through layers through they were in a building and they were falling through the floor over and over and over again, and then died when they hit the bottom, after some period of time, and freaked out about this dream. It was a very scary dream. And I'll talk about nightmares in a minute, and I'll talk about monsters in our dream in a minute as well. So, and I said, and not knowing, like I hadn't asked this person anything about their life. I said, you were going through a major, when you had this dream, you were going through a major transition in your life, like some big change. This is shamanic. This is initiation, falling through into the underworld to die and to be reborn. And this person said to me, yeah, I was, the time when I had that dream, I was coming out of the closet as gay to my family. And, um, understanding from my friends who are gay, who have had the experience of coming out of the closet, that is a huge and can be threatening experience, right? It can change your whole life, your relationship to your family, your relationship to your friends. It was a pretty big, major transaction. And it made sense to him at that point. Like when I said that, it was like, oh, yes, that's what was going on here. So, we have to be careful about taking things very literally. Our unconscious mind deals in metaphors quite a lot. And so, as I promised, I will talk about sort of nightmares, scary dreams, and particularly monsters in our dreams. Very often, the characters in our dreams are representations of parts of ourselves. This might sound weird, but monsters, scary beings in our dreams can actually be repressed parts of ourselves that are they're scary because they're fierce, or they may even be violent because we have this aspect of ourselves called the shadow. And the shadow is parts of ourselves that we repress, also called the exile, because they are socially unacceptable, or we've been taught that we're bad, or whatever. They carry some level of shame, usually, sometimes, or most of the time there's some level of shame about having these parts. Everybody has violent survival impulses. That doesn't make everybody violent or a serial killer or anything like that. Becoming a good, quote unquote, good person, a part of society that's kind and helpful, we naturally repress these parts of ourselves, but they want to surface. They're there for a reason. Even though we judge them, even though we feel shame about them, and that's why they're in the shadow, because we don't want to look at them. It's painful for us to look at those parts of ourselves. It's important for us to do that. It's important for us to surface that, to recognize that they're there. Now, this is the whole Jekyll and Hyde thing, right? Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde was a story about the shadow part coming out. This, doctor took this potion, and this like lascivious, violent, blah, blah, blah part like took over. And the shadow, it is a lie to think that if we surface our shadow material, that we're going to lose control or become a bad person, or we're going to live out our sexual fantasies and cheat on our spouse, or we're going to become violent, or we're going to do whatever. None of that's true. That only happens when we repress and we have less control over the parts of ourselves that we're repressing. Whenever we're triggered, whenever we have emotional triggers that send us into a state that we're like, that's not like us. And I've been there. I know that that's shadow material. It's potentially traumatic material coming up. So it comes up a lot in our dreams. So very often, characters in our dream, whether we are living out some fantasy in our dream, or we are surfacing monsters in our dream and having nightmares, that often represents parts of ourselves that are repressed. And when people are like, oh, I keep having this, nightmare about this monster, and I think I'm being attacked in my dreams by, we talk about like the incubus and the succubus and the demons that attack us in our sleep. Most of the time, our demons are internal. They're a part of us, right? And the way to work through that is to work with those parts of ourselves that have been repressed. First of all, to surface them, to understand that they're there. I'll do, if I probably have before, but I'll do another talk at some point on on doing shadow work. Really critical. It's a really critical part of human development, of spiritual development. And whenever you have spiritual teachers, spiritual leaders, whatever, and they become abusive, they steal, they become physically or sexually abusive, or whatever, it's because they haven't done their shadow work. They've developed some level of power very frequently. I had a teacher when I was in college. I had a spiritual teacher when I was in college who could perform, I witnessed some stuff that if I talked about, people would think I had a psychotic break, but I wasn't the only person who saw them. So unless we were all hallucinating, and he wound up committing suicide. And the reason was that he had you can develop a tremendous amount of spiritual ability, a tremendous amount of spiritual wisdom, but if you haven't cleaned up your shadow, you're actually more dangerous, right? It's much more dangerous to gain spiritual power if you're not also doing your shadow work. I do shadow work all the time. I will probably never cease doing it because it is incredibly important for me in my practice to be ethical, to never harm anyone, to never take advantage of anyone, to not hurt my family, to, all of these things are incredibly important to me. And I know I've seen firsthand what can happen to people who are not doing their shadow work, who gain some little bit of power. Look at politics, and not just American politics everywhere, right? You see these people who gain a little bit of power and they go off the deep end with it, and they become very abusive. Politics, spirituality, religion, it happens over and over and over again. So you got to do that. You got to do that work. But shadow material surfaces in dreams quite a lot because your psyche wants to process these parts. And so very often when someone's like, oh, I have a recurring nightmare of, this person or this monster or, whatever, or sometimes when we are having sexual dreams with partners that are not our partner or spouse or our partner, and it may be somebody, like it may be represented by somebody that is in our life in real life, or somebody completely made up by our unconscious. That's just revealing hidden desires that we have in our shadow, and it's important not to feel shame about that. It's important to understand that that's a part of ourselves that wants to be acknowledged. That's, again, it's not saying I'm going to go out and have an affair, or I'm going to go out and even do the activities that I'm dreaming about necessarily. But recognizing that that's coming from inside of us, really important. Dreams of flying, dreams of, often we have dreams of wanting, like if we feel repressed, if we feel held back, very often we're going to have dreams that involve symbols of or activities of freedom, dreams of flying or dreams of being able to do, having superpowers or that sort of thing, right? These are desires for these things coming out. And like I said, a lot of dream material is wish fulfillment, which can sound really weird, particularly if we primarily remember nightmares. But nightmares aren't always wish fulfillment, but sometimes they can be. Actually, sometimes they can be hidden material surfacing in a way that's a little bit scary as well. So something to keep in mind. That's kind of it. Let me see where. Oh yeah, I've been talking for almost an hour. I will wrap pretty shortly. I have actually a few things to do. A few things to do today. A few people to meet today. But I just wanted to come on and talk a little bit about dreams. I think I said something about it yesterday that I would come on today and talk about dreams. I'm going to try to get back into doing these more often. There's been a lot of stuff going on in my life. I got a painting of mine, got into an art exhibit. It's amazing when things are going through. My kids just started their senior year in high school. I'm been traveling and been sick. I've been, life is just very interesting, and it is what it is. Oh, thank you. Yeah, you too. I hope you have a great Sunday as well. Yeah, I haven't. I've been really bad about doing these. I'm going to try to get back into them. It's just life, and I am grateful for the craziness that is my life and my family and everything. So I'm very, very grateful for the opportunities that I have and the students that I have and everything else that's been going on. I may try to do some painting today, so we'll see. We'll see about that. Maybe I'll talk about that in an upcoming lecture. I'll talk about creativity and expression as it relates to spiritual development. I do think it's really important. I happen to paint, but people do all kinds of different things. I have just a lovely woman that I know who's a shamanic practitioner up in Maine, and she does paint and draw and stuff, but she's really, really an amazing quilter, which I do not have. My grandmother was a quilter. A really fantastic quilt that she made me with my family tree on it. But expressing yourself in whatever way, getting the stuff that's inside of you out, processing is really important. Some people write poetry. I have a student who writes poetry. Encourage her to do that. Some people cook or paint or draw, or some people, I don't know, perform martial arts or dance or whatever it is that you do to express yourself. I encourage significantly. And it doesn't have to be anything that you ever share with anybody else. That's not the point. You can if you want to, but that's just getting your stuff out and processing it is really critical. So maybe I'll do that next. Maybe the next talk I give will be about that. So anyway, with that, I will leave you for the day. I love all of you. I will talk to you very